Sal Capaccio, he'll join us here on the Wester Hotline. Draft day number 2. We're on it. Jeremy and Joe, we're up early. If you're watching us on the feed, how do we look? Do we look like we're up till past midnight?
Past midnight,
at a party?
Yeah.
Sal,
I feel good. I mean, the crash comes after, I usually have found.
I was texting Sal, what time to come on. I'm like, Sal, I know it's a late night for you as well, Sal. So we're all up early after round 1, ready for round 2. Good morning.
Good morning. First of all, my sincere apologies. You did text me last night, and it was like kind of in the middle of the night, like the draft night, and I had my phone on silent because of, you're in the media room and you want to be respectful. So I saw it. I never responded right away. And then later in the night, I saw you text me again, like, hey, what time do you want to come on? I'm like, oh, geez, it was past midnight. So I'm glad you saw it this morning. And then you definitely don't want to see me this morning.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that I'm not on the video stream because I left. I actually did a video. I posted it at Sal Sports on my social feed. It was 1:40 a.m. when I left the parking lot. So I got home at about 2 a.m. last night.
Yeah, those of you covering this and doing like the post-game, post-draft on these late picks, much respect. All right, Sal, so Max Hairston, what did you learn about the Bills' first-round pick? And I think there's a pretty good consensus that the way the board fell, 10 defensive linemen go before they pick, that had kind of been picked over and that corner was going to be the spot that they leaned to, whether it was Trey Amos or Max Hairston, who was a guy that was pegged in the first round quite a bit in mock drafts. It ends up being Hairston with the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I had pegged them to take a defensive lineman, but corner was certainly always in the mix, and we never know what would have happened if a couple defensive linemen fell, but this is what happened. The board winds up falling a certain way. And I just go back to what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott said at the end of season press conference about adding speed and adding playmakers. They've kind of always said that they need to do that on this team. And that's what Max Hairston is. He is the fastest player in the draft, at least the fastest at the NFL Combine. Ran a 4.2840. He was very productive 2 years ago. Not as productive as far as numbers last year. In 2023, he was second in all of FBS, and he led the SEC with 5 interceptions. He took 2 to the house. This is a playmaker, and that's what they drafted. He's a very, very fast playmaker. So you ask, why did he drop down? Why wasn't he listed higher? A couple things. Number one, as Brandon Beane points out, which is right, he's a little bit on the smaller side. He played probably about 190. He told us last night he's at 192, I believe. Brandon Beane said if he's taller and he's bigger, he probably is a guy that's considered and goes a lot higher. But number two, I think it's because his run support has been the question. And anytime someone will bring up Maxwell Hairston to me, I would say, hey, fantastic player. I don't know if that fits what the Bills want in their corners, because the Bills really like to have guys who are very good against the run or at least willing to participate. That's what we found out about Max and why they were able to draft him, guys, which is, as much as it kind of goes against a lot of their philosophy that, corners need to be able to tackle, it's really more about willing to be able to tackle. And Brandon Beane made no bones about it last night. He said he's a willing tackler. He gets big boyed sometimes, and he's going to get in our weight room, and he'll be better at that. So I think when you add all that up, you understand why the Bills made this selection.
I also, there's an injury that happens along the way, shoulder injury, and I think it was even a complication from kind of a botching of the treatment, whatever. He had a couple of missed tackles in big games, Sal, but from what I read about him, that's really more of there were a couple of bad games post-injury where that showed up, but before that, it was not really a concern. It's almost like the story about being a tackler that might need work is almost something that through the process, when you're picking these guys apart, you found, there might be an issue with tackling, when in reality, the year before, no one had thought that about this guy.
No, that's right. And look, I mean, he's a cornerback. Yes, tackling's important. It's not his primary job, right? He's not a linebacker. He's a corner. So I think you have to, as a team, kind of weigh all of that and say, well, it's not his primary job. And if he makes a lot of plays at corner, but he misses some tackles, can we live with that? And I think you're going to have to here. And you might have to live with that during the season, especially if he plays early on, which we can talk about, where he fits in. But I think the Bills just felt this is too good of a playmaker, too fast of a player who can make plays on the field and fit what we need to add to this defense. I mean, I think Brandon Beane's quote is telling when he comes out, and I wrote about this at WGR550.com. He was just very honest. He said he adds something to our room we didn't have, speed. I mean, he's just being honest about his room, and they had to do that, and that's what they made sure they got.
Yeah, not only did he kind of phrase it as though it's something we haven't had too. Thought I saw that in the quote, but I saw it on Twitter that like it's something they haven't had, and maybe they've tried for it. And Trey White was not like slow by any means when he was playing at his best. Kyrie Elam had speed, but he was a 4.39 guy, not near 4.28. So the level of speed that he brings, I don't think of a defensive back that they've had that can really touch it. And what that could do for them, Sal, like, I don't know, like, I don't really think of them as having problems with, I mean, really, their track record against guys like Tyreek Hill has actually been great. So it's not like this utter weakness. The Bills haven't been able to cover speed guys, but, we'll talk about matchups against Worthy, I'm sure, when they play Kansas City, or Hill when they play Miami again. And, it's another chess piece, right? A guy that can cover those speed receivers.
Yeah, and I think, if you go back, there's some highlights or some clips of him covering Isaiah Bond when they played against each other against Texas, and that's a good comparison. Isaiah Bond's obviously very, very fast as well. But you're right, Joe. I mean, when you take some of these receivers they're going to play in the season, and you take Xavier Worthy, obviously there's some speed on some of these, Tyreek Hill, the Miami Dolphins, but you're going to be facing teams that are going to throw the ball, great quarterbacks, a lot of speed, and now you have an ability to match up. He's a versatile scheme guy. So if you want to match up and say, in certain situations, he's going to go man-to-man on some of these really fast guys, or he just sticks in zone or whatever. That's fine. I think the Bills are very comfortable. I asked Brandon Beane about that. He said he can play both. He's done both. I asked Max Hairston about that. He said he can play both. He's done both, so he fits really right there. And by the way, I'm calling him Max Hairston because he said he prefers Max.
Yep.
Just so everybody knows. I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be a big deal to call him Maxwell, but just so we're all clear, we did ask him specifically last night, do you prefer Maxwell or Max? And he said, I prefer Max.
Yeah. What did Bean say, if anything, Sal, last night about his role right away and his opportunity to start right away?
Well, it's going to be a competition. He's going to be in the mix to start. It's going to be a competition opposite Christian Benford. And I remember last week, Brandon Beane saying that Dane Jackson is looking forward to, competing for that starting role. And then they signed Tre'Davious White, or maybe he's right after the Tre'Davious White, and that's why we were talking to him about it. This is going to be a competition. It's 3 guys, basically. Maybe 4 if you want to count Jamarcus Ingram. I would never count him out. I think he's been in the system 3 years. He's a different kind of player who can do some different things for them. But there was really 4 guys competing for one spot. And that's Max Hairston, Tre'Davious White, Dane Jackson, and Jamarcus Ingram. Now, I think when you take a guy in the first round, a lot of people are going to be expecting him, especially looking at the age and situation with a guy like Tre'Davious White or Dane Jackson. You expect that Hairston will start, and as a fan, you say if he doesn't, then that's kind of disappointing. I totally understand that. But I think you also have to give some space to, he is a rookie, he's coming in, and he's going to have to compete against veterans who know this system very well. If it's not day 1, maybe it's week 4, maybe it's week 5. I mean, Kyrie Elam was drafted in the first round, and we know that didn't go well at all, but at the time you weren't thinking necessarily we'd get to where it ended up, but he didn't start because Christian Benford wound up beating him out. The other thing I really like, guys, about this is, let's just say he really can play, and he becomes a really solid guy, and a contributor right away, a starter. You just signed Christian Benford to a 4-year extension, so that means he's under contract for 5 more years. You can have Max Hairston for 5 years. He has a 5th-year option. So if he's pretty good, you can literally, now you have your 2 corners for the next 5 years on this team.
Yeah, they could be creative with it, too. Elam, I was actually looking at this last night, because I thought I remembered him playing in that opener against the Rams, but you're right, he didn't start. But the Bills, I saw they kind of mixed it up. They found ways to get him in there. He played 44% of the snaps that day, that first game, where he didn't start. It was Benford. The next week, he played 66%, still didn't start. So, I mean, Hairston, I wonder if... It's not. That's the thing, though. It's not usually a rotational position, though, right? That those couple weeks that happened with Elam, maybe that's the only example that I can think of where that happened.
Yeah, and listen, I remember last year, and I've used the example many times, guys, where when the Bills drafted Cole Bishop in the 2nd round, and I tweeted out, and I've talked about this, and said, okay, Cole Bishop, I don't see him starting right away, and a lot of people were mad, and Bills fans were like, come on, give me a break, 2nd round, you got to start. I mean, it's not easy to walk onto a team that's been to an AFC championship game in this case, or, had been to and has been a division winner for the last several years and just become a starter. It's not easy. But this is a spot that's open. And it's really, to me, maybe the only true spot on the entire roster that's open, right? I mean, I've been saying defensive tackle is, but that's a rotational piece. This is the one spot on the entire roster where you could look around, lay out a depth chart, and go, where do we not really know who the starter is? Because even at defensive tackle, it's Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver. You can add a rotational piece in Dwayne Carter. But here, is Tre'Davious White starting? Is Dane Jackson? I mean, so much so that last week I put a poll up about this. I said, what's your depth chart at corner right now? Because we didn't know. So right now, he's going to come in. He's going to have an opportunity to compete right away for a starting job.
Sal Capaccio on Max Hairston, Bills corner, who was selected with the 30th overall selection. On to day 2, the Bills pick number 56 and 62. If they want to move up, I was laying this out, Sal, just mathematically, they can kind of go anywhere they want in this round as long as they have a willing trade partner. They'll have the ammunition. It's significantly less expensive to move up in the second than the first. So how aggressively will they seek defensive tackle? I would be inclined to think maybe not that aggressively, because if there's a defensive tackle that was in this ballpark, they probably take that guy. 10 guys go off the board. We'll see. How do you see this playing out from here? Defensive tackle, defensive end, receiver. They have 2 picks in round 2 and none in round 3.
I'd still be surprised if they draft offense. It's certainly possible. Once the board starts falling, you just never know how things are going to wind up, right? You look at a guy and go, okay, well, we can't pass up on this guy. I'd still be surprised if that's the case. I mean, Luther Burden is still out there. I know that's a favorite of Mike Shope and a lot of other people out there. But I still think they're going to attack defensive line most likely and, defense overall. When the Bills were on the clock at 30, as soon as it got to them, sure, Max Hairston, jumped into my mind. He's a guy. Will Johnson was another guy. I mean, he's still out there. Now, now that you have Max Hairston, it's a discussion. Could you go out and get a guy like Will Johnson who you say, okay, he doesn't have to start right away. We can deal with the knee. But the fact that he fell so far, guys, and he's out of the first round, the fact that Jim Harbaugh, his college coach who brought him to Michigan, did not take him, kind of tells me that there's real concern there about Will Johnson, right? But if you're a team like the Bills and you now have Max Hairston in the fold, you don't have to have Will Johnson come in and be the starter. You've already drafted over him. Does that become a possibility? When the Bills were on the clock, as I was saying, the guy I was thinking of that really came into play there was Donovan Ezaraku. Ezaraku.
Yeah.
I looked this up several times. Ezaraku. 16 and a half sacks last year, right? I mean, at BC. I think that's a guy that comes into play if you get there and, he's still on the board. Or, as you say, maybe you trade up. Obviously, there's some real big concerns with Mike Green, the edge rusher, but he is still, and that's probably why he's still available, but he's a player. Nick Emenwari, this goes back to the thing we talked about yesterday with safety. You guys know I've just never believed they were going to draft safety, and I still don't believe that would be the case. But if you're going to do it, I think it makes more sense now for a guy that, just like I said last year about Cole Bishop, you don't have to have him come in right away. This is a second-round pick. If you think you can use him as a chess piece, then I think that they'd be more open to it. But I do believe defensive line, defensive tackle. I think Darius Alexander's a guy you could look at from Toledo. He's a guy that can play the one technique. He's a super good athlete that could play there, but not quite the anchor. But I think he's a guy that could come in the mix as well.
You want to know who one of the pro comps I saw for Alexander? ESPN has his pro comp is Larry Ogunjobi. So
there you go, right?
Hey, yeah. we like a player like that.
That's right.
So
Do you know what the only thing about him, Jeremy? Though I think he's 25 years old. That's
okay.
that is a, and you're going to get that sometimes. I mean, Ray Davis is 25 years old, right? So I mean, that happens now.
Meanwhile,
the COVID players.
Max Hairston is 21. Like, he's really young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the Bills have, they have some younger players now on the team. We talk about Keon Coleman a lot and how young he is, obviously. And you're going to get a wide range now due to COVID and transfers and all those kinds of things. But one thing you'll notice, I don't know if people have gotten a chance to watch the Zoom call with Max Hairston or listen to it at all. I know you played the clip coming in, but he's a ball of energy. I'll say that. Yep. And he's not just fast on the field. He's just kind of fast the way he is about everything, it seems, in his life, and in a good way. Super positive. I believe there's some clips I've seen. He was actually like hugging every other person who got drafted. Like, he was the first guy to be dapping him up and hugging him. Like, he was just a part of it. He just wanted the experience for him was really awesome, and that was great. So when we get him on the Zoom call last night, I noticed on his PR notes that the Bills handed out, it said his nickname is Mad Max. So I asked him about that, and he said that's absolutely true. He said when he was in Little League, he was smaller but a ball of energy, so he got the nickname Mad Max.
Yeah.
Like it.
You mentioned defensive tackle, Sal. I want to ask you about, you talk about Johnson and the injury stuff there. The Bills at defensive tackle, they need a guy to play. And I've been thinking about this Deion Walker from Kentucky, who's huge, 6'7", 330. Joe Marino, we had on Wednesday, he's not a fan of this player. He thinks the Bills should stay away. But they did have him in on a visit, and he had the stress fracture in his back last year. And I was wondering about him for them, because here's Ogunjobi, who's not, probably going to play a ton of one technique, but he has, and that's an option for you, and he's gone for 6 games. And how much do you think whoever they were to draft at defensive tackle would be with a mind to, well, this guy's, we want him to have an ability to play right away, and if he's got an injury concern that, you know what I mean, like we don't want him missing the first 6 games. We're already without a guy.
Absolutely have to, Joe. I mean, anybody they bring in at defensive tackle right now really has got to play. Anybody who they bring in the first half of the draft, he's making the team. Like, you're not cutting a second, third, or fourth round pick. And what happens when you make the team at defensive tackle? You're only keeping 4 guys, maybe 5, but 4 are active on game day. So anybody they draft right now, in the top half of the draft at that position, he's playing right away. So you're right. You have to be able to play. It's just not an option. You're not taking a guy because what is the option? He just doesn't make the team, because then, I mean, you could make him an inactive on game day, but that you need to have a guy step right in. I would even go so far as to say that if they go and after the draft get a couple of veterans, those guys might be in the mix to have to play, because that's what the Bills do at that position. Right now, you have Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, and Dwayne Carter. That is it. Yep. No disrespect to Zion Logue. Unless you think he's going to make the team, which is fine. He's a practice squad guy from last year who they did re-sign to a futures contract. But anybody you draft now is you're taking and you're pushing Zion Logue down the board.
That was a little sloppy there by me. What I mean is, or what I meant to say is that they might be less likely to take a guy like Walker who has availability questions, because they're going to need to rely on this player for the first 2 months of the season.
Understood.
Yeah.
A guy I've heard is TJ Sanders. I don't know. I mean, he's just about 300 pounds, right? I mean, again, I'm looking at guys. I just said Darius Alexander. He's just a little over 300.
Yeah.
I still think they want a bigger bodied guy. But you're right. I mean, you take a guy like that who's a bigger guy who, fits the profile. But I think that you don't have the ability or the space here to ramp him up, and wait on him.
We got to call Eric and Elma. The comment on the screen is interesting. I want to get him in before we let you go, Sal. Go ahead, Eric. You're up.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. My question's about more like the nature of the draft. So we go back 2 years ago. We see a lot of the offenses are very pass-heavy. The following draft, you see, there's not a single defensive player drafted. I forget how long, but it was a while. You see a ton of wide receivers taken off the top. The next year, you fast forward, a lot of the most successful offenses were a lot of the run-heavy offenses, the Eagles, the Lions, us. Consequently, the next draft, you see a lot of tackles taken, a lot of defensive players. How much of who's taken in the first round of the draft is truly, the best available versus being kind of reactionary towards what we're seeing in the NFL?
Thanks, Eric.
It's a good question. Yeah. I would say it this way, and I've said this for many years. Football is cyclical. That's what it is. I remember Bulldog and Show, they'll tell you this story. I mean, when I kind of first started at WGR and in my role, and we talked a lot about this for middle linebacker more than anything, which is middle linebacker was just starting to get smaller, and they were using these hybrid players, and they were using flex tight ends, and we were talking about how, man, you're just going to a much smaller type of player. And then all of a sudden, because defenses got smaller, what did offenses start doing recently? Yeah. Now they're getting bigger. Running backs are coming in. You're pounding the ball a little bit more. 6 offensive linemen for the Bills. I think this goes to the question that the caller is asking, which is you got to be reacting to what the trends are in the league. There's no doubt about that. And I think that does happen. But when it comes to BPA, best player available, I always say it's not truly best player available. If the best player available is a quarterback, the Bills aren't drafting a quarterback, right? It's got to be best player available as long, ... as long as it's at a position that you can actually use him.
Yeah. The thing I would say about the evolution of the draft. We could make it cyclical about the positions and the types. What I think it really has become is a reflection of the surplus you can get by the valuable positions. Why did receiver move up the board, and why did running back move down the board? It's because you save a lot more money by going receiver. Same with defensive end and corner, and tackle is one of these as well. You've got like your 6 real big money positions. Quarterbacks moved to the top 3 almost exclusively. And if they're not there, it's more of a reflection of the class itself. So you could see that about receiver. You can see that about quarterback this year, that there just weren't guys worthy of those picks up that high. So I think what you can look at more than anything is the salary and the surplus you get with the selection.
You know, it's funny, Jeremy. I think receiver is the best point for this. You're right, because, I mean, look at the incredible receiving classes we've seen over the last several years.
Yeah.
Suddenly, it's just not like that this year.
All right, wait till Jeremiah
Like,
Smith comes out in Ohio State in that class.
Right, yes.
There's going to be a class in 2 years where there's going to be 7 more go. So, yeah, a little bit cyclical. But thanks, Eric. It's a great question. Thanks for bringing it up. Sal, thank you very much. On to round 2 tonight. We'll be listening. We're excited.
All right, guys, you got it. We'll talk to you a little bit later on the Extra Point Show at 10.
Very good. Sal's up with the Extra Point Show. Round 2 of the draft as well.